Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. It was my privilege today to interview best-selling author Dr. Cindy McGovern.
You already know. My passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. GreatnessWithin.com. DJ Hoisington. GreatnessWithin.com.
You see, Cindy is a best-selling author. She's written several books. Her new book called Sell Yourself. Yes, sell yourself. And how does that relate to your goals and your dreams? I'm telling you, we go over that in this interview. Cindy, or Dr. Cindy McGovern, wow, I tell you what, she was a college professor of communications. She is the founder of Orange Leaf Consulting, which helps companies and individuals create robust sales processes that help them get results. And I'm telling you, wow, she shines through here in this interview with her optimism, her attitude, and really her message of it's okay to put yourself forward and shine the light on some of your strengths so that you and your family can achieve your dreams and your goals. And she gives us a lot of great nuggets in this interview. Now, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, hey, do me a favor. If you wouldn't mind, subscribe. That would be great. And then make sure you click that notification bell so that you're notified whenever I come out with a new success interview like this and others. And we have more that will be coming out soon. So, hey, you want to be notified. And if you're listening to this because you download it from Apple Podcasts or Spotify or iHeartRadio, thank you for being a part of my community. And if you're not yet, hey, be a part of the Unleash Your Greatness Within community. If you're watching this on Rumble, then hey, join me over there as well. Anyway, without any further ado, what a powerful interview. It was a joy having Cindy on the podcast here. So let's just jump right into it. Cindy, welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, TJ. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. And I've never done this before, but what I like to do in the beginning is just put out a little message for all the listeners, all the watchers, if you're watching this on video and so forth. A brand is everything. And Dr. Cindy McGovern is going to go over what a brand is and how to sell yourself and so forth. But let me tell you something. If you want to achieve your dreams, if you want to set a goal and achieve it, if you want to get that next promotion in the organization that you work for, to have that dream job that you always hope for, I'll tell you what, that comes back to you as a listener of building and creating a purposeful brand. I learned when I was a young teenager, sorry, Cindy, one more thing. When I was a young boy and I found that cassette tape from Jim Rohn, the business philosopher, one of the things I remember him saying over and over is that you get paid based on the value that you bring the marketplace. And I just think to myself, when I was reading your book, and I read the whole book, just so you know, I was just like, yes, we need to get this message out. Because if you just show up at a job and think that it's just going to, by magic, work out without your intentional effort, it's not going to happen. So sorry to go long on that opening, but Cindy, welcome to the show.
You nailed it though. And I'm a big too. And so literally that is the message that I hope to drive home with this new book, is getting people to recognize their brand and how important it is to have a purposeful, powerful brand.
Totally. So back us up just a little bit, Cindy, and give the audience a little introduction of your background and so forth.
So I'm Dr. Cindy, and I work with companies and individuals to help them actually reach their goals, grow their business. And I take the ick out of selling, because most people don't want to be in sales. They think it's this icky thing. And so I truly believe sales is a life skill, not a business skill.
Agreed. Totally agree.
In high school, So I want to help people to do that. And your brand, you got to sell it.
Yes, you do. You do have to sell it. So let's get into that. Let's take the ick out of it as of sick. Let's take the ick out of it. But hey, let's start with, let's get really basic here with the audience, because we don't know where people are hearing this, watching this, and so forth. What is a brand? Why is a brand important? Hey, lay it on us.
Yeah. So everybody has a personal brand, whether you realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest wake up call for some people is like, well, I don't have a brand. You do, because a brand is how others perceive you. It's how others think you are in this world. It's what impact you're making on other people. So whether you're doing it on purpose or if it's intentional, you're still having that impact. So that brand exists.
Yes. And if you let it happen, I assume that it could end up being anything, and you could be what Zig Ziglar back in the day would call a leaf in the windstorm, right? So
yes. Yeah. And it's your best sales tool.
Yes.
People do business with people they like. So if you want that raise or promotion, like you were saying earlier, you have to sell you. You have to sell your talents and skills and the impact that you're going to make on the organization. And that is a sales trait. That is a sales process. So you've got to have that brand to lean on and make it your best, most powerful tool so that when that opportunity presents itself, you know what to say.
Oh, I love it. That's really great. Your first book was Every Job is a Sales Job. And now you've come out with this new book, Sell Yourself: How to Create, Live, and Sell a Powerful Personal Brand. How did this come about? After your first book, then you got into this. What have you noticed out there in the marketplace?
So when I did the first book, I wrote the book. The first book was literally the book I wish somebody had given me when I was 20.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, I wish I'd had that lesson earlier on before I ever went into sales. But this book came out of basically teaching the first book and recognizing that people who aren't in sales are missing the point that they are selling because they're selling themselves. And so it's a lesson that I learned back in graduate school. And I tell this in the book, but I was about to graduate with my PhD.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
I thought I had done a great job of showing them that I was studious and a great researcher. And a professor basically made me aware that my brand wasn't what I thought I was selling. And I was like, wait a second, but I did all the things. And I think a lot of people can recognize and resonate with that because it's like, but I'm a good employee. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to. Why do I keep getting passed over for the promotion? And it's because they're not selling themselves.
I find that, I just want to second what you just said. I find that to be true. When we do, for example, our leadership academy inside companies, people often on our executive coaching calls or mid-level coaching calls that sometimes I'll do, they're always like, I want to get to the next level. And so I end up, in a way, teaching a little bit. You go deep dive, but I do teach a little bit about creating a brand. You have to figure out a way with, let's just think, if you're in a company and you want to get to that next level, you have to figure out a way to add value to the business. And you've got to have the character. I think you should get into that because you tell the story in the book about the girl, I think it was the bikini girl story. And I thought that was a great, you even say in the book, here the end of my story as I share this with you, because sometimes people have multiple brands going at the same time. And I just find that inside companies, you have to put yourself forward in such a way that you're noticed for that next job, for that next opportunity to help solve that problem. And if you're just sitting back, just with your head in the computer, getting your job done, and you're not being noticed, I'm sorry, you will likely, maybe, get skipped over in certain opportunities. Any thoughts about that?
100%. That's exactly what happens. But it's because people are scared to brag on themselves. They think it's narcissistic to say, but I can do that. No, if you really can help and you can have a positive impact on your colleagues, your company, you're kind of doing everybody in the world a disservice by dimming your superpowers. Why wouldn't you bring that forward? And there is a way, and I do teach this in the book, but there is a way to bring forward those talents, and I call them your superpowers, to let people know. But you've got to be really clear on it. And that's the bikini girl story, is you have to be clear on what you want people to know you as, because whether you're a leader in your organization now or not, you are already. Whether it says it on your business card, you are creating your leadership legacy now before you ever get the job.
Love it.
So are you selling people on that? Or are you selling them on, I'm an excellent worker, and they're never going to see you in that leadership light? Raise your hand and be brave enough to fail forward and try things, because I think your courageous attempts will be rewarded.
Absolutely. I love that. Your creative attempts will be rewarded. Yes, it's like planting seeds, right? And if you nurture them, they will grow. It's the law of the harvest, if you will. But let's talk about ego for a second. Yeah. You make it clear in the book, which I love. You make it clear in the book that you have to live. Okay, so if a brand is already speaking for you, for example, we know in sales and in customer service, right? People have an impression on you within 4 seconds, right? So it's instant. And so over time, when you work in an organization or on a team or whatever, you're sending out signals all the time. When it comes to ego, first of all, you talk about, hey, live with integrity, know your brand, and live it. You do a whole chapter on that, which is really vital. But I think you're right. It's not an ego thing for you to want to show forth your skills and so forth, because in the end, it serves the organization or it serves the people that you're associating with. I think with ego, because if it becomes manipulative and you're not coachable, that's when ego can get in the way in a negative way. Any thoughts around that?
Absolutely. And I, like you, believe in a win-win type of sale.
Yes.
We both believe that both parties should have something wonderful come out of this, or else it's not a sale. That is manipulation. And nobody likes to be sold. Everybody likes to buy. So you're inviting them to buy your talents. You're inviting them by showing them what's available. It's like you walking into a restaurant and they have all the desserts in the case. They're inviting you to buy one. You have to show people what's available to them so that they know. And then you've got to live that. You've got to actually know that brand, know who you want to be known as, know how you want them to talk about you when you're not in the room. And that's how you start bringing that to life. And I truly believe this to my core. We're all here to help each other.
Yes.
So let your multiple facets of your brand shine when the opportunity presents itself to help. And that will actually reflect very positively on you, because people are going to see you. Your brand becomes helpful, wants to pitch in, team player, willing to go the extra mile. Who wouldn't want to be known as that?
I know, but Cindy, okay, now this is a little edgy, but I was in person, but we were doing an executive coaching hour or whatever. And this person told me, it was 3 days ago, said they saw a video on Facebook where a group of people were saying, your company doesn't care about you, so give the bare minimum. And I wonder if there's a certain small group of people out there that think it's okay to give the bare minimum. But you and I know the people that get ahead are not doing the bare minimum. The people ahead aren't, in terms of a brand, they're not selling themselves and then not delivering. People that are getting ahead are selling themselves. They're selling their skills. They're laid up, at 12 o'clock midnight, still working on a skill, a trait or something, or a knowledge base or whatever. And then they deliver that. It's not that we're trying to sell something that we don't have. No. We're becoming something that has skills, knowledge, attitudes, and so forth. And then we're just saying, hey, notice me in such a way that I can help you move forward.
Yes. So it's very interesting that what you're talking about is the trend of quiet quitting, where people are doing this. That's what they're calling it now. It actually got a name because so many people are talking about it. But it's quiet quitting because they're literally saying your company doesn't love you. Like, you should just clock in at 9, clock out at 5, do just the bare things. But what people don't recognize who are doing this and engaging in quiet quitting, they're selling that. They're selling the fact that they don't care. They're selling the fact that, well, then, whether the company cared about them or not doesn't matter. They have to recognize they're selling their own brand in this moment. And oh, by the way, the company you're doing the bare minimum at is the one the next company is going to call to check on you before they hire you. So you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your colleagues a disservice. And that absolutely becomes your brand, unfortunately.
And you're doing the culture a disservice.
Yeah.
I mean, so you just triggered a thought. My oldest son he was a wrestler. He was also a football player, but he was a wrestler. And I remember when he went to state, he had to wrestle some guys he had already beat. And I went to the coach. We had two brothers who were coaches. They were all-American wrestlers at the college level. And they were just awesome. And I went up to one of them one day during the state tournament. And I said, hey, should Bryce conserve his energy and, hold back a little bit, just kind of hang in there, win the match, conserve the energy for the next match? And I remember Anders telling me, he's a good guy, Anders saying, we never give anything but our best every time. And I knew that in my heart. And it was just good it had to have that confirmation that if you want to get to the top, you're not, what'd you call it? Silently quitting? Is that what it was?
Quiet quitting.
Silently quitting. You're giving your best. And maybe there's a time for you to move on to a different job. But while you're there, you want to leave a legacy brand, someone who made a difference. Man, so good. So good. This is what you say in the book. So I think this is my words right here. How do you determine your brand? This is what you said. Finish this sentence. So to the audience, finish this sentence for yourself. I want to sell myself as. Do you want to sell yourself as a dependable employee, as a respected leader, a social media influencer, a good mom? In the words you filled in are the essence of your brand. I think those are some good. So you're always speaking your brand, no matter what. You're always speaking it. Love it. So let's quickly just talk about sales. You mentioned it. People don't like to sell. Why go into that for just a second? Why don't people sell?
I'm only giggling, TJ, because I was one of them. So
yeah.
I wanted to be in sales because I thought it was horrible. I thought the avatar in my mind was the old school manipulative, car today, and then it breaks the minute you drive it off the lot kind of an approach. And the truth of the matter is, there's a very small percentage of salespeople that maybe engage in some of those tactics. We are sold to every day. We just call it sales. And so I had this horrible idea of sales. And then when I realized, wait a minute, sales is helping people. Sales is wish fulfillment. Sales is giving somebody a resource. I can do that. And I like to do that. Why wouldn't I be doing this in other aspects of my life? So that's the first piece, is people to recategorize and reframe what sales is. Sales isn't pushing anything onto anyone. I would never teach that. Sales is simply saying, I see that you have a need and I have something that I think could maybe satisfy that need. Are you interested? That's it. And if they're not, that's okay too.
Yes.
That
is okay, because it's everybody's choice what to do. But what I'm hearing you say is just to show up and do your job is not going to be enough if you have ambitious goals to go further.
Absolutely. And I think that it's even, we both are executive coaches. And one of the things I see with so many people that I coach too is they're not recognizing that they're not selling a brand of leadership. They're not selling a brand of I can handle more, because cultures and organizations, we tend to reward busy. And so when we look super busy, we look like we can't take on another project. We can't handle another responsibility. You've got to sell the fact that you can take that. You've got to sell the fact that I want to give it a try. And unless you're doing that and really taking those incremental steps, that's also another reason you're probably being passed over, is simply because maybe you've ingrained yourself in that busyness culture.
I think you're spot on there. It seems like I'm coaching people. Hey, what's a committee you can get on? What's something you can give 10% of your energy toward, that maybe after the 8-hour shift or whatever, that you can get involved with? And maybe there's an executive that's in that group, and all of a sudden you join it out of a desire to help the company succeed. And then 6 months later, down the road, there's a need. And then that executive goes, hey, TJ was in the group. Maybe he could take on that project over there. At least you're considered then. but you've got to put yourself into those positions and those opportunities to be noticed. All right, let's talk about branding from this perspective. Let me paint a picture for the audience. You have a brand. Look at everything that's around you. You look great, by the way, but I mean, you got your previous books in back of you. You'll soon have your new book right there along with it, and so forth. I noticed when I was looking at the two book covers, they were a similar color and theme, if you will. I'm a hawk about staying within my lane, because there's only one time, and maybe you can talk about this this multiple facet. If you're not careful, it can create a problem thing. There's only one time where I deviated from my core brand. And that was when I wrote, and you may not know this about me, but I wrote a 400-page book, a novel. I'd never read a novel in my life, and I wrote one, and it's called Return to Robinson Island. And it was the first Swiss Family Robinson sequel in 100 years. And you can see that on Wikipedia. But I'll just say this. That was me separating from my normal brand. But even when I did that, I tied the story of that extra goal that I was working on back to book writing, back to living your dreams, back to you can do anything you put your mind to, right? I figured out a way to tie it back, even though there's kind of two multiple brands. But then I quickly got back to my main brand, because this is greatness within is my brand, right? So what do you say to someone that maybe isn't sure what they want, that maybe they have different social media type posts out there that aren't consistent? What would you say about all that?
So I love that you recognize it was still on brand for you. And I think part of what people need to do is recognize if they've deviated from the brand. So give yourself an honest inventory of what you're putting out there. So social media is a great example, right? If you're posting on, one platform, very business-like, and then the other one, you're posting your, online shop where you crochet pot holders or something.
Yeah.
Do they mesh? Nothing wrong with either one, but do they mesh? Because all have different facets to our brands. I am a businesswoman. I own a business. I'm a writer, but it doesn't mean those compete with each other. It's when they fly in the face of each other where people get confused, and we like to categorize people, right? Like we like to put you in a box and say, oh, TJ helps unleash the greatness with people. TJ does this, TJ does that. By you writing that book, by you writing that novel, you are showing your audience how to unleash their greatness within. It was absolutely on brand. But where people struggle and where they get themselves in trouble is when there isn't a way to bring them together. They're separate core values, or they're faking it, quite frankly, social media is the highlight reel, let's be honest, so
no,
you're living this life and you're really not living this life. So part of what I teach and what I want people to take away, and everybody watching, is be authentic. Make sure this is something you can sustain. It needs to be set in your core values and who you want to be known as, or else you're going to have a really hard time rectifying it out in the world.
So you say in the book on that subject right there, you say in the book, you got to know your values. What if you climb the ladder of success only to realize that you're leaning against the wrong wall?
Yeah.
I love what you say in the book. You got to know your values. What do you value? What's important to you? What gets you up in the morning? What gets you excited? What ideals do you have? Is it authentic? Is it real? Right? Because I do think that people do struggle with the imposter syndrome. So what would you say? Is there a time and a place to, quote unquote, I don't like the term that much, but it's the usable term, fake it till you make it? What's your thought about that?
I'm only giggling because I think that's been a lot of my life. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out along the way. So I do think so. But imposter syndrome is actually what we tell ourselves. Nobody else can see that, right? It's already in your own head. It's your own judgment of you butting up against the side of your comfort zone. That is literally the voice of you knocking against the wall of the comfort zone you're in right now.
And that doesn't make it wrong. Just because this is good.
Yeah.
So just because you're bumping up against the edge of your comfort zone, that could be a breakthrough. That doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Yeah. Nobody grows in the familiar zone, right?
That's right.
But I think that imposter syndrome is a really nice governor because it lets you know, oh, wait a minute, you're growing. Like, it's like if you go work out, you're a little sore the next day because you're growing, you're shifting, your muscles are changing. That's happening to you as you're doing this. So if you're expanding your brand, if you're expanding your leadership legacy, if you're starting to show people at work what you do and it's a little bit different and starting to put yourself out there, it's going to be uncomfortable to start. It is, you're going to feel vulnerable. I know I went through this and I don't know if you did too, but in my first book, I went, oh my gosh, I just put all of that on paper and now people can, like, it was like why tell those stories? Why did I do this? And it's super vulnerable, but you know why we do it. And I know you know this and you feel this way too, because I wish somebody had taught me that. And my core value is helping. If I wasn't vulnerable, I can't help people. So I had to butt up against the side of my comfort zone to be able to help other people. The desire for me to impact people's lives is greater than my own discomfort in my comfort zone.
That allowed you the freedom to maybe step out of your comfort zone a little bit easier. And then once you stepped out long enough, right, it became normal, right? Once you became that, once you wrote that first book, maybe it was uncomfortable in the beginning. You weren't sure how people were going to respond to it. Now they kind of look at you differently. I remember, this is 20 years ago when I wrote my first book. I remember my speaking engagement fees in one day went from this level, right, to that level. Yeah. What changed? Nothing changed other than the perceived brand to the marketplace. And as Jim Rohn would say, you get paid based on the value that you bring the marketplace. And a lot of that is perception. But I will say what we said in the beginning, it's backed up with action. It's backed up with skills. It's backed up with knowledge. We're not selling something we don't have.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest difference when you're selling yourself is you know yourself. Like, at least I would hope you do.
It's easy when you sell yourself. When you're selling yourself, to me, it's easy because I can be consistent. Exactly.
You are completely, it's the one sale you're in control of.
I love that. It's true. So you told later in the book, and maybe just touch on it here. I love the idea that when you're living your brand, this is my words, that when the winds blow and you descend into a valley where you face challenges, it doesn't cause you to give up. I wrote that close to the area where you talked about, I think it's WTOP-FM in Washington, D.C., Sean Anderson. Do you mind telling us the story of here's someone who was consistent?
Okay, so this is like the best story, and I love that you picked up on this one because he's someone that I ended up meeting when I was living in DC, and he's the anchor for the radio station. And we just got to talking, and he was talking about his brand, and I'm like, "How do you do it?" Like, "Oh my gosh, you're on," and he's like, "Well, I'm Sean, but plus 10%." And I was like, "That's exactly the way I feel, right?" When and you know this too, TJ, like when you're giving a class or you're running a workshop or you're giving a speech, it's still you. You're still you, but you're you with like a little extra oomph. And what Sean shared with me that day and in this conversation, which I thought was really powerful and very impactful to me, is like, and when I can't be Sean Anderson and I just need to be Sean, I make a choice to stay home because it would be different than my brand that people are expecting. We sell people on who we are. We sell people on who we want them to think that we should be and could be. And we see this with celebrities, right? When they go off brand. Sean is always, in the times that I've ever encountered him, which has been maybe 4 or 5, always Sean Anderson, 100%. And it's a great lesson because it's an intentional decision for him to live that brand. And he's willing to protect and defend that brand. And that's really important for all of us, because if you are you minus 10%, you're also selling that.
So good. And I'm sure you've been offered opportunities and so forth. I know I have, where I declined to take the opportunity because it wasn't central to my mission.
Same.
Same for you. Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it because it's not in line with the impact that I want to make on people's lives.
100%.
It's off brand for me.
I remember Jim Collins's book, Good to Great. Of the 13, I think it was 13 companies in there, 6 of them or something, 15 years later went bankrupt, like Circuit City and so forth. So he came out with another book, and I love the next book, which was called How the Mighty Fall. And guess how the mighty fall? And it goes right to your message. The mighty fall is when they let go of, in his book, he called it, he doesn't talk about brands, but concepts here. He talks about these companies let go of their flywheel, which is what made them successful up to this point. They forgot about those assets, and they moved into new areas without protecting the golden egg, or protecting the flywheel, if you will. What I think that relates to brand is just the power of being consistent over time. And there's so many voices in this world that will distract us and pull us off our brand and so forth. You have to know your value. I'm just channeling you. You have to know your values. Set up, you say in the book, you got to create a plan. You got to create a purpose. You say this, a purposeful plan. And there's a way to do that. I actually wrote something down here. You say, if you haven't decided exactly what you want, ask yourself 5 questions. I'm going to put you on the spot here, so maybe you can make I'll say the each one of these, and then I'll pause, and if you have a thought, shoot in a thought. So these are the 5 questions you ask people to ask themselves. Number 1, great question. What does success look like for you?
So for that one, I think that's actually the hardest question for people to ask, which is put it first. Because until you define what the end game is, the rest of the questions can't be answered. And so people need to get clear. We can unleash our greatness within. Absolutely. But you got to know why you're doing this and where you're going with it, right?
Totally.
And it's getting clarity and going, this is why I want to do it. This is where I want to be. This is what success looks like. Success for me looks like helping other people get up every day and live their best life. That's my success, is when other people get up and go, I know how to do this. I can do it. And that's for you. Which
articulates a value that you have for yourself. You give me a little bit of goosebumps in the idea that you can unleash your greatness when you brought that up. Listen, it's kind of bold to say, but I don't think you can ultimately unleash your greatness unless you are in alignment with your values, you're in alignment with a sense of purpose. I think when I think of all the people I've studied and great thought leaders like you and authors like you and so forth, one thing that I have found is they have found their purpose. They have found their groove within the world. And I think a person does need to take the time to consider, take jobs, and when you're young, take jobs and opportunities to figure out what you like and what you don't like. But at some point, you have to decide what direction you're going to move in. What's the purpose behind it? As you say, contribution in the book, and you've already kind of mentioned it, helping people. What is the moving value behind it? For what purpose? Because if it's just about money, it'll be short-lived. But if it's about a higher purpose, wow, great things can happen. Okay, so the first question is, I agree with everything you said. You've got to just define what success looks like for you. Okay, number 2, what are the qualities you want others to know for you?
So For this one, I think we get confused. And what ends up happening is we want to be known for, a myriad of things.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't be known for 10 different things. But if people can't figure out how to tell a story about you, they can't brag on you and they can't help you. And part of having a powerful personal brand is you've had some kind of impact on others that they want to tell that story.
Yes.
You want that promotion at work. You want those colleagues when the boss says something and mentions your name. They're like, oh my gosh, I love working with TJ. He's always so helpful. There has to be something there. And so if you don't have that, that's where you get a little confused. People get a little bit off track. So getting to know how you want to be known and what those, pick five words and see if you're actually living them. Do an honest inventory. Is this how people would describe you? Because you are selling something now. Is it what you mean to be selling?
I was in another executive coaching call and they said, yeah, so-and-so, I will never use names, but so-and-so, he will max out all of his sick time. And then when he works enough days that he earns another sick day, the moment that new sick day is available, I don't know how all that works within a particular company, but whenever that sick day is available, he will automatically call that day in sick every single time. So what brand is that person? What message is that person putting forward?
Well, they're putting forward that their time off is more valuable than their colleagues. And what we have to remember is we're having an impact on those around us. And if that person has an illness, that's a different thing. Like,
agreed. Yeah.
They would need to, communicate that with the leadership of the organization. But let's assume that's not happening, that this is just I want my time. There's nothing wrong with boundaries. There's nothing wrong with healthy boundaries. But it's the lack of communication, because when you are gone, someone is left holding the bag.
Oh, so true.
So recognize the impact it has. So if you're out, that's great for you and you go to the beach or you sit home and watch TV, but everybody else is having to scramble because that wasn't communicated. Like there's an impact that you're making. You are selling them on the fact that you probably don't have a consideration for them. That's really the thing you're selling. And that's probably not the image you want them to have of you.
It impacts the culture of that team for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great. Number 3, what do people think when they hear your name? Is that what you want them to think? Okay, that kind of goes in. This is just another question that you should ask. What message are you sending out there? And is that the message you really want out there?
And I think we have to seek feedback. On that. Ask people around you, because otherwise you don't know. And that lack of self-awareness is going to kill your brand.
I think that's worth stating again. Feedback is critical. It's going to require you, listeners, to be vulnerable. Obviously, you're not just going to go to anybody to get the feedback. You're not going to go to a dream killer to give you feedback about you going after a new ambitious goal. But are there people in your life that you can say, hey, I was thinking this, I was considering this. What do you think? Good. Okay, number 4. What are you doing right now that might prevent people from thinking about you the way you would like them to? What information is out there that contradicts from this? What are you doing that give people an impression that is opposite from the one you want them to have?
And that goes back to your question about the social media piece. And I do have a story in the book about a young lady who couldn't quite decide what she wanted to be. So she was posting 2 different accounts. One was more of a model and one was more of a journalist.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
Those brands don't go together in most people's eyes. It doesn't mean they can't. If she was a journalist about fashion, very different. But she wasn't. She was a journalist and education and business, and they don't gel. And so when people can't see how they fit together, it's really hard for them to go and talk positively about you and tell the story about you, because they don't know who you are. They can't figure out where you get filed in the filing. And we as humans, people can be multifaceted, but we still like to file you somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can be in multiple files. You could be in the author file, you can be in the mentor file, you can be in the leader file, you can be in the dad file, you can be in the spouse file, you can be in all of those. But there is a common thread with them. And when you have something that is truly going against the things you want people to know, you've got to be vulnerable enough to ask. get that feedback. And the way you accept the feedback is also your personal brand.
And I think you write about it in the book too, that consistency creates trust.
Yes.
Because you become dependable, whatever that message is.
Totally. But that's where we, when we buy a brand name of something, laundry detergent, shampoo, whatever, you buy it because you trust that it's going to work. You don't even think about that anymore. It's like, I know that one works. I'm going to buy it. You're going to pay 5 cents more because you trust it. Are people literally not even having to go through a thought process when they're like, I need this, TJ's my guy. I need this, so-and-so is my person.
Cindy's my girl. There we go.
Thank you. Love it.
Yeah, because you're consistent. Your brand is consistent, right? I'm sure I haven't walked beside you, but I'm sure your messaging is consistent.
Intentional. It's intentional. And I think that's where people have to go back to their brand plan, because if you don't have a plan, it's going to be really hard to live it and really hard to sell it.
Very good. Your last of those 5 questions is, what brand do you believe will get you what you want from your career and life? So just slow. Yeah. Okay. Your thought on that.
So for that one, it's looking at who's where you want to be already. What did they do? How did they tie that message together? Learn from the people that have forged the path ahead. Nobody does this life alone. So learn from somebody that's already gone through that and say, oh, well, these are the things that they did. It's almost as if you're learning a new skill. And let's say that you're going to learn to dance. You watch good dancers, don't you? You watch the instructor and see what they do with their feet. And then you craft your own style around it. Why wouldn't we do this with our personal brands and looking at the people who are successful and living the life that we want and going, all right, I can do that in my way. My way, you got to put your own hallmark on it, but doing it in your own way, but looking at what has worked.
Success leaves clues. Learned that many years ago. Success leaves clues. So what's wrong with duplicating? I don't mean copying. I'm not talking about copying. I'm not taking someone else's intellectual property and using it. But principles are principles. Actions are actions. And, if something works for someone else, can it not be like a recipe that if I duplicate it and, as you said, put your own spin on it, put your own creative flair into it and so forth, you can create something magnificent on your own that's still in alignment with the law of success, but has Cindy written all over it or TJ written all over it? Yeah, totally. Good stuff, Cindy. I enjoyed reading your book. I mean, I went through it. You talk about establishing trust. You talk about, you talk about, hey, at the end, we don't need to go over it here on this interview, but if you're listening to this, there's a part toward the end of the book. What is the best course of action if you go off brand? You give several steps there on how to kind of deal with that.
Yeah. So we all have bad days, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because we snap at someone or we fire that email off just a little too quick. Own it. If you go off brand, recognize that it was off, apologize if that's appropriate, show that you're going to take steps to make it better. Because what I don't want people to think is this book is all pie in the sky, like you have to be perfect all the time. We're human. Human.
Amen.
But own your humanity then. And if you snapped at somebody, own that. Okay, that was out of character for me. I shouldn't have done that. And I'm sorry I did. And, don't explain it away. Just fix it.
Ego gets in the way. Cindy, I agree with you 100%. It is, and I know you and I are two people that are probably the few out there that are really embracing the whole idea of saying, I'm sorry, or I don't know, or I made a mistake here. I just want to emphasize that point. You are spot on with that. And I'm glad you're saying that. We all make mistakes. We're human. We're all fallible to some degree. And sometimes we overreact in a negative way when our stress is high. Think about the times when you, as you said, snapped at someone. You probably did it at a time when stress was high. So, hey, monitor your stress Be cool, calm, and collective under pressure. That's the good person. That's the greatness within you. That's the first lady of sales. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Within you. Your tag name.
Love it.
Yeah. But I think it's okay to say, so we don't see enough. I'll be honest. I don't think we see from many leaders around us in our world, generally speaking, that are quick to say, I'm sorry. But you know what? The ones that connect with their team, they do. They do. They say, hey, I know yesterday I kind of overreacted when you did this or that. I'm sorry that I overreacted. I shouldn't have been like that. You will gain more. It takes courage to do that, but you will have longevity of respect from that than you will if you just snap at someone and let it be, or try to, as you said, justify yourself why you did it. Don't do that. Just apologize. It's okay. Let's move forward. We're all human. We'll get to the top together.
Exactly. It builds more trust, I would even say.
I agree.
It shows that you can be vulnerable with your folks. You can admit when you are wrong. And you also are leading by example by doing that, because you're crafting a culture where they're allowed to be human too.
Cindy, you have a great book here. Sell Yourself. And sell as your messages that everyone will identify in the book is you could sell yourself and still be the real you. And I think that's the message I walked away with a lot of how-tos in it. You have some great stories in the book, but you also have steps for action. And so make sure that I just invite everybody to get a copy of this book, make it a part of your library, and then embrace it. Go to work at changing a couple things in your life. And by the way, when we suggest change, we're not saying because you are lack of a human being or that you don't have innate self-worth. We're not suggesting that. Everybody is good, but we're talking about how do I go from good to great and then achieve some of the goals and desires of my heart. So, Cindy, any last thoughts from you on the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast?
I first off just want to say thank you so much for having me. I feel like we could for another hour.
We could. I feel like I looked at the time and I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been going longer. We could do a part 2 and we'd feel like we didn't get anywhere.
This was so fun. It's so fun. But the thing that I want all of the viewers and listeners to take away is you have this brand and it's already very powerful, but it is absolutely within you to make it even more powerful, more impactful, to give more value, to make a greater success of yourself simply by living and selling your magic superpowers. And that's really about unleashing your greatness.
Yes, go get your superpowers, develop them. They're already there. It's not a matter of finding them. It's about discovering them and unleashing them.
That's it.
Cindy, you were great to have on the show. We should do this again sometime. I can't wait till your next book comes out and we'll do it again. How's that sound?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This was really fun.
All right. Thanks a lot.